Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Jyoti Prasad Chatterjee, Associate Professor in Sociology, Barakpur Rashtraguru Surendranath College, West Bengal, India. Today I will be talking on typology of social movements. It's a kind of very interesting area for the students of sociology to concentrate, because social movements are just like or as important as society itself to sociology. So it is very basic, very rudimentary for everybody concerning the subfield of social movements, or as far as possible the basics discipline of sociology. So let me start with the basic and overall objective of the module. That is, we all know that social movements are multidimensional. We have very numerous forms of movements, and they all bear certain unique characteristics. So it's a kind of different distinct sociological realities that we are having from the social movements, and social movements are indeed very fluid and dynamic. So classification indeed or really becomes a very troublesome business, because it always gets changed. The fluidity of the character of the social movements, it renders its classification with enough difficulty. So we will be trying to summarize as far as practicable the ideal typical kind of construction of the social movements. So let us start with the first one, that is the section 1, that is the overall typology of movements as envisioned by Herbert Blumer. So he has made 3 distinct types of social movements: the general social movements, the specific social movements, and the expressive social movements. The general movements is basically rooted in gradual and pervasive changes in the values of people. They are mostly unorganized and unstructured. And what about the specific social movements? They have very well-defined objectives, organized, of course, structured, and has recognized leadership. So this differentiates the, general movement from the specific one. And what about the third one, that is the expressive social movements? They do not seek to change the institutions of the basic society. So the tension is released by some expressive behavior. Now, I move on to Rudolf Heberle's typology, that is, he has classified movement again into 3 types. So the first one is movement of limited goals. So as the name suggests, the movements have very limited goals or objectives, and so obviously they are very narrow in scope, and they are mostly local, at best regional, or mostly national, and as a result of this, their participation or the scope of the movement is very low. Now, the second one is movement aiming at comprehensive and fundamental change. So, as the name suggests, again, they attempt to bring deep-rooted changes in the social structure. So, their scope is wide and their participation is naturally huge. Now, the third one, that is socio-psychological types, and Heberle includes 3 distinct subtypes within it. So what are those subtypes? The value rational spiritual community. So it's a kind of religious overtone is there, and the emotional affectual following of a charismatic leader, as Max Weber has termed these movements, that this charismatic leadership, the person who has some personal qualities or caliber for which people follow this person. So that is a different kind of formulation of a movement as mentioned by Heberle. And another one is the utilitarian association for the pursuit of certain specific goals. Now, I am moving on to the next typology as envisioned by Neil J. Smeltzer. So, according to him, there are basically 2 types of movements. One is norm-oriented movement, another one is value-oriented movement. So, what is this norm-oriented movement? It's a collective action mobilized in the name of a generalized belief, envisioning a reconstitution of norms. So the target is to transform or reconstitute the norms of the society, and basically the reform movements often have this type of goals. Now the second one, that is the value-oriented movement. Similarly, it's a collective action mobilized in the form of a generalized belief to transform or reconstitute values of the society. This is very important because certain very much important or pertinent or contemporary movements have this type of goals. Now, Gusfield's, Joseph Gusfield's typology, I am moving straight on to that. And Gusfield's typology is basically based on two dimensions. First one is on the level of organization, and the second one is on the level of goals of the movements. So what are the types on the basis of level of organization? There are basically two types as mentioned by Joseph Gusfield. So first one is undirected movement. This is transitory because they lack direction and lacks a definite and specific associational context. And the second one is directed movement. So it is structured, and it has it has very specific sort of program, well-defined ideology, and very structured leadership. Now I am going to the classification of movements as offered by Gusfield on the basis of the goals. So there are two types of movements. One is public policy oriented movement, and another one is private persuasion oriented movement. Again, the name suggests this, that the public policy oriented movement, it attempts to bring in effective change in the rules of government, because the very name public suggests it. And another one is private persuasion oriented movement, as the name suggests, that it tries to transform the individuals. Second one, the next one is David Aberle's typology. David Aberle, very eminent anthropologist, he has classified movements into four types or four forms. So what is the basis of this classification? The focus of the change and the degree of the change. Focus means what the movement wants to change, and the degree is how much change is sought out of the movement. So on these basis, David Aberle has classified movements into four types. The first one is transformative. It aims at total change in supra-individual level. So the scope or the degree of change or the focus of the change, we have to keep it in mind that it aims at total change at the supra-individual level. So that basically it's a kind of social change that this movement tries to attain. The next one is reformative. Reformative means it seeks partial change, but at the supra-individual level. So the example, women's movement, limited change, not kind of total change of the society. A particular category, the women's, they are addressing their issues. So it's a partial change, but the level is at the supra-individual level, not for any single individual or any single woman. And the third one is redemptive movement. What is redemptive movement? It seeks total change. The scope is total, but the level is individual. So the focus is individual. Certain religious cults movement we can cite as examples, which attains or which strives to attain this type of change. And the fourth one is alternative movement. It aims at partial change at the individual level. So it's very narrow in scope. Certain ecological sustainability movements, they have this goal. Now we are moving to the second section on typologies of social movements, and we will be following here Paul Wilkinson's typology. He has done a very rigorous study on these typologies, and we are mentioning some of the important typologies as offered by Paul Wilkinson. The list is the religious movement, millenarism and sect, rural and urban movements, nationalist movement, race movement, reform movement, revolutionary and totalitarian movements. So we are going to the first one, that is religious movement, millenarism and sect. So what religious movement is? It is a relatively organized attempt. So the religious movement is not necessarily unorganized. It is organized attempt by a number of people to cause or prevent change, either to bring in change or to resist change in a religious organization or in religious aspects of life. So what are the characteristics of religious movements? They claim to a source of doctrinal authority. By claiming this source of doctrinal authority, they offer justification for their collective mobilization. They try to reorient individual personality and behavior, as any religion does, that they try to transform, they try to reorient individuals' behavior and personality, and they claim to primacy and to authority on the basis of the monopoly of revelatory or rational ideological truth. So they claim that we have this ideology, this is rational, so we are trying to do this or that. And final one, that as every religion does, that they have integrative and solidarity building function. That is the most fundamental sociological function of religion, that they goes for, that they attempts for social integration. And so the next one, very much closely associated with religious movements, but not I mean not a similar form of movement. They have certain subtle differences. This is millenarian movement. So what are the differences? The root word is millennium. Millennium literally meaning a period of 1,000 years, that we all know. Now these millenarian movements, they always invokes the millenarian tradition. So what is that tradition? According to this tradition, that Christ, Jesus Christ, will reappear in the guise of a warrior, vanquish the devil and hold him prisoner. So he will do everything good, and he will then build the kingdom of God and reign in person for 1,000 years. That is the concept of millenarianism, that Christ will do every good for this world or for this planet, and then he will reign or he will rule for 1,000 years. From this 1,000 years, the concept of millenarian or millenarism comes. Now, millenarian movement is a type of religious movements that expect imminent, total, ultimate, but this worldly collective salvation through abolition of the evil of the world. Now, what are the important characteristics of millenarian movements? That is total salvation, this worldly orientation. This is very important because not very often religious movements have this type of orientation, but millenarian movements have this orientation, that they are strictly this worldly. Collective orientation is there, ecstasy is there, messianic and ephemeral movement. So all the sorts of, a different form of movement from the prototype of religious movement is here. Now, what are the important examples? Basically, we have a range of Adivasi movements in India which bear these characteristics of millenarian movements. The notables one are the Santal Rebellion of 1855, Birsa Munda movement of 1895 to 1900, and Tana Bhagat movement from 1914 to 1919. Now, we are going to a different shade of religious movement, that is sect. What does sect mean? Sect signifies an exclusive group of earnest believers of any religion living apart from the world. So they are not this worldly. As like the millenarian movement, they are not this worldly, they are outwardly. They live apart from this world. Now they claim complete civil and religious freedom. Complete civil and religious freedom. Main ideal, what is the main ideal of the sect? That is the formation of religious communities composed of truly converted persons, truly converted. If you are from a religion and if you join a different sect, then you have to be truly converted on a basis of voluntary membership. Now, sects often protest against the religious degradation of the parent religion. Parent religion, they do not tolerate the malpractices, they do not tolerate the degradation of the parent religion, so they depart that, or say they just come out of that religion and form a sect. Now, I am moving to the next type as offered by Paul Wilkinson, that is urban and rural movements. So, what urban movements mean, or what does it we want to imply when we say that this is a kind of urban movements? It's collective actions consciously aimed at the transformation of the social interests and values embedded in the forms and functions of a given city. So the locus is the city. The urban movements, they are typically urban in character because they are located in the ambience of city, they are located in the cultural space of the city. Now, what are the characteristics? Purely urban, citizen-centric or related to the city. Any problem of the city that are collectively addressed, these we can call urban movements. Now, they are locally based and territorially defined. As the scope is the city, so they are locally and territorially defined. Their scope is within the ambience of the city or within the limits of the city. Now, they mobilize around three major goals. What are the goals? Collective consumption of the city dwellers, cultural identity of the city dwellers, and political self-management of the urbanites. Now, the opposite form of urban movements is the rural movements. That is the mobilization of the rural people, as the name suggests, the mobilization of the rural people against modern, industrial and urban encroachment in rural and or agricultural sectors. So, outside influence or outside encroachment into agrarian sector, that is the basic cause of rural movement. And Rural mobilization also takes place against the exploitation of moneylenders. That is the history of Indian peasant movements bears testimony to this, that the peasant movements in India, they are basically their location was the rural areas, and they have raised their voices against the exploitation of the moneylenders, landlords, zamindars combined. Now thirdly, the rural movements, they are mobilized against the imposition of the burden of taxation upon rural folk. What are the characteristics? First one is primitive xenophobia. Any sort of outside encroachment is fought against, and there is intolerance, anti-urbanism and anti-industrialism. And now we will be focusing on nationalist movements. This is a very pertinent movement. During the course of Indian freedom struggle, we have witnessed this trend of movement. So nationalist movement is a form of social movement to obtain territorial sovereignty of a nation, that we are struggling for India's freedom, India's sovereignty, that is the territorial sovereignty of a nation. Now various demands of nationalist movements, the notable one, first one is regional autonomy, or autonomy of a kind of geographical territory. Then special status within a federation, often involving linguistic rights. Certain, contemporary movements in India, as in Gorkhaland or in certain states of northeastern states and in other areas in India, there have been this type of movements which seek special status within a federation, and they often involve linguistic rights. Then full-scale separation from multinational states, regimes or empires. Full-scale separation means secession. Just like certain demands, maybe Mir or Khalistan, whatever, they try to have a full-scale separation from the parent nation of India. Now, what are the characteristics of nationalist movements? They are rooted in identity politics. Identity on the basis of common culture, maybe on the basis of language, religion, history and territoriality are constructed contextually for political gains. So the thing is that the identities are constructed contextually, situationally, depending upon the political situation or considering different political claims. Then they seek control over territory. Control over a particular geographical territory is an integral element. Whenever there is a kind of nationalist movement, there must be a consideration of territorial sovereignty. Then the third characteristic is they strive for economic development. By this, they try to rearrange or redesign, refashion the existing distribution of economic resources in their favor. Then another important movement, race movements. It may not be very common to India, but globally this is a very common subtypes of movement, that is race movements. It's protest against prejudiced attitude and discriminatory practices of one race against the other. So the bone of contention is prejudice and discrimination between different races. Then what are the goals and characteristics? That race movement, they strive for racial emancipation and equality. They give a call to end racial discrimination, and movements against racialism or prejudice, they always believe in a myth or that one's race is superior to other or the other race is superior to me. They want to abolish this type of feelings. Then reform movements. Reform movements, there are enough talk about it. Reform movements, India, in fact, in Bengal, there is a glorious tradition of reform movements. So reform movements, they focus or they try to change on specific or delimited arenas of life instead of total rejection of societal values and norms. So their scope is relatively narrower. Their characteristics, they strive for a good society. They want to bring or establish a good society. There may be religious influence at times, and they are necessarily or most often they are led by the educated segment of the middle class. Now, the opposite form of reform movement is here, that is revolutionary and totalitarian movements. So, what does revolutionary movement mean? Movements with the goal of ushering in revolutionary reconstruction of society. So, that is a all-encompassing demand that we want to change or transform or utterly transform the basic structure of the society. Then it attempt to sweep away existing social, political and economic structure. That is the utter transformation of the society I was just mentioning. Opposite to reform movements that I have already mentioned, because reform movements often have a very narrow scope, but revolutionary movements, they often target or try to alter the entire social structure, so its scope is much wider than reform movements. Now, there are different strategies of revolutionary movements. The guerrilla warfare. What does the word guerrilla means or guerrilla warfare mean? That is indigenous military or paramilitary force, indigenous, not a kind of state machinery or kind of trained machinery. This is indigenous military or paramilitary force operating in small bands, small groups in occupied territory to harass and undermine the enemy by surprise raids. So it is not a kind of thing that it's a routine affair. It just sporadically takes place, surprise raids. So rural base is necessary, because the thing is that if the rural population do not come into the support of the guerrilla, this type of activities cannot be sustained for long. Then revolutionary conspiracies of secret societies. What these secret societies do? Seizure of control over the organs of government at the top by a handful of notables, powerful military officers or ministers, like coup. We know about the term coup, seizure of power. And the third one is Leninist strategy. That is a very kind of well-known strategy. Class struggle is the basic, and revolution under the leadership of Communist Party is necessary. Mass revolutionism. What is mass revolutionism? Rooted in the ruthless hatred to the existing social system. That is the word, ruthless hatred to the existing social system, and the call is to destroy it. So we have to destroy this existing social system, because this social system is highly corrupt. This social system is anti-people. So we have to destroy it. We have to transform it by any means. Then there is totalitarian movements, comes very close to revolutionary one. That is, it also aim at calculated destruction of all rival parties, loyalties and potential bases of opposition. So any sort of opposition they want to abolish, and calculated destruction, that is the thing. So it's a kind of organized attempt to defeat or to destroy any sort of opposition. So this is impossible unless there is revolutionary seizure of power. We can consider the existing society fully corrupt, that the society is fully corrupt and fully immoral, so beyond any scope of reform, and so this sort of revolution is the solution, only solution. So they press the demand for total transformation of the society, utter transformation of the society, and for this they want to have the conformity and loyalty of the people. So that often becomes mandatory loyalty, mandatory conformity. So to sum up the whole discussion, we can say that that social movements as the vehicle for promoting or resisting change is as fundamental to sociology as society itself. As society is base to sociology, social movements is also very basic to sociology. Then the types we have mentioned, I have mentioned at the very beginning that these closely resemble Weberian notion of ideal types, that they are constructed basically in reality. Social movements, they are a kind of mix match of many attributes, many different features, many different characteristics, but still as Weber has insisted, that we can understand the reality by constructing it certain analytical constructs like ideal types. So these types of movements are also analytical constructs, and these will help us to understand the different properties, characteristics of social movements, so that we can analyze the reality from the angle of these analytical constructs, and that will help us to develop or enhance our level of understanding of social reality. Thank you.